One officer followed an order exactly as it was written. Within 20 minutes, 600 men rode into a valley they were never meant to enter, and almost none of them made it back out. It's October 1854. Britain, France, and the Ottoman Empire are fighting Russia in the Crimean War. Near the port of Balaclava, the British cavalry is stationed on a ridge, watching Russian forces begin to pull captured artillery pieces off a nearby hill. The British commander, Lord Raglan, can see the entire battlefield from where he's standing. He watches the Russians preparing to haul away the guns. And he doesn't want that to happen. So he dictates an order to be carried down to the cavalry below. But there's a problem. Lord Raglan can see multiple sets of Russian guns from his elevated position. The officers down in the valley can only see one. The written order says the cavalry should advance rapidly and prevent the enemy from removing the guns. It doesn't specify which guns. Raglan means the ones he can see retreating on the distant hill. The order is carried down by a young cavalry officer named Captain Nolan. By the time it reaches Lord Lucan, the commander of the cavalry, the only guns visible from the valley floor are a completely different set. A heavily fortified battery, dead ahead, flanked by artillery and riflemen on both sides. Lucan questions the order. It doesn't make sense to him, but Nolan, frustrated, gestures broadly toward the valley and says the guns are there, right in front of them. Lucan takes this as confirmation. He passes the order to Lord Cardigan, commander of the Light Brigade. Cardigan reads the order exactly as it's written. It says, "Advance on the guns." There are guns directly ahead. He doesn't ask further questions. An order is an order. At 11:10 a.m., roughly 670 men on horseback begin riding directly down the valley toward a battery that is defended on three sides. For nearly a mile and a half, the Light Brigade rides directly into Crossfire. Russian gunners on the hills to the left and right open fire first. Then the battery straight ahead joins in. Men and horses fall in the first minute. The formation doesn't stop. There's no order to retreat, and turning back midway would be just as deadly as continuing forward. So they keep riding, through smoke, through a wall of grape shot, directly at the guns they were never meant to face. Incredibly, some of them reach the battery. A handful of cavalrymen actually cut down Russian gunners at the cannons themselves before being forced to turn back through the same crossfire they'd just survived. The ride back is just as deadly as the ride in. When the survivors regroup, fewer than 200 of the original 670 men are still on horseback. The rest are dead, wounded, or captured, all because two officers standing a few hundred meters apart were looking at two completely different sets of guns, and neither one realized it. A French general watching from a nearby hill reportedly said it was magnificent, but it wasn't war. It was madness. Captain Nolan, the officer who delivered the ambiguous order and gestured toward the wrong guns, was killed by the first artillery shell of the charge. He never got the chance to explain what he meant. Lord Lucan and Lord Cardigan spent years afterward blaming each other publicly for the disaster. Lord Raglan, who wrote the original order, insisted his instructions had been perfectly clear. He simply never accounted for the fact that what he could see from a ridge, the men on the ground could not. No single person disobeyed an order that day. That's what makes this different from most military disasters. Every officer in the chain did exactly what he believed he was told to do. The charge of the Light Brigade is remembered today as a symbol of courage and catastrophic miscommunication in the same breath. Not because anyone was reckless, not because anyone panicked, but because three men standing at three different points on the same battlefield were each following the same order, and each one was right from where he was standing. If you were Lord Cardigan, reading that order, seeing those guns directly ahead of you, would you have charged or would you have stopped to ask one more question?